It was a typical monsoon night in Kolkata on August 10, 2024. The rain had been falling steadily, drumming against the windows of RG Kar Medical College and Hospital. The streets outside were nearly deserted, the usual cacophony of the city dampened by the downpour. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere was somber yet bustling, as the night shift staff went about their duties, unaware of the horror that would soon unfold. Dr. Moumita Debnath, a dedicated second-year postgraduate trainee, had taken up her night shift as usual. She was known for her dedication to her work, often going above and beyond to ensure her patients were cared for. That night, however, her focus was divided. She had been feeling uneasy all day, a sense of dread that she couldn't quite shake, but she dismissed it, attributing it to exhaustion from the long hours she had been putting in. As the night wore on, the hospital began to quiet down. The patients were mostly asleep, and the corridors were bathed in the dim glow of the emergency lights. Dr. Debnath found herself alone in one of the seminar halls, a place that usually served as a hub of learning and discussion. But tonight, it felt different, eerie, almost sinister. The air was thick with humidity, making it hard to breathe, and the usual hum of the air conditioning system seemed muted, as if the building itself was holding its breath. It was in this unsettling silence that the unthinkable happened. What exactly transpired in those horrifying moments remains a mystery, but the aftermath was all too clear. Dr. Debnath's body was discovered the following morning, lying lifeless on the cold floor of the seminar hall. The scene was one of unimaginable brutality. Her body bore the marks of a violent struggle, her neck broken and clear signs of sexual assault. It was evident that her last moments were filled with terror and pain. News of the murder spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the hospital and the city at large. The once busy corridors of RG Kar Medical College and Hospital were now filled with an uneasy silence, as staff and students alike grappled with the reality that one of their own had been so viciously taken from them. The Kolkata police were the first to arrive on the scene, quickly cordoning off the area and beginning their investigation. But as the hours turned into days, it became clear that this was no ordinary crime. The sheer brutality of the act, combined with the sensitive location, a hospital, meant that this case would require more than just the usual investigative procedures. The Central Bureau of Investigation, or CBI, was soon called in to take over. Their involvement signaled the gravity of the situation, and they wasted no time in getting to work. Teams of investigators swarmed the hospital, interviewing staff, reviewing security footage, and collecting evidence. The seminar hall where Dr. Debnath's body was found became the focal point of their investigation. Forensic experts meticulously combed the area, searching for any clue that could lead them to the perpetrator. But despite their best efforts, the investigation was mired in difficulties from the start. The hospital's security system had numerous blind spots, and the footage that was available was grainy and inconclusive. Moreover, the fact that the crime occurred within a hospital, a place where hundreds of people come and go at all hours, made it nearly impossible to narrow down the list of suspects. As the investigation dragged on with little progress, the city of Kolkata found itself in the grip of fear and anger. Dr. Debnath's murder had struck a nerve, highlighting the vulnerabilities that women face even in places where they should be safe. Protests erupted across the city, with people demanding justice for Dr. Debnath and calling for greater security measures in hospitals. The media also played a significant role in amplifying the public's outrage. News channels ran round-the-clock coverage of the case, interviewing everyone from hospital staff to political leaders. The case quickly became a flashpoint for broader discussions on women's safety in India, drawing comparisons to other high-profile cases such as the Nirbhaya case in 2012, which had similarly sparked nationwide protests and led to significant legal reforms. In the midst of this public outcry, Dr. Debnath's family was left to grieve in private. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a loved one, in the most horrific way imaginable. The media attention only added to their pain, as they were constantly hounded by reporters, looking for a quote, a reaction, anything that could add to the story. Yet through their grief, they remained steadfast in their demand for justice, refusing to let their daughter's death be reduced to just another news headline. As the investigation progressed, several theories began to emerge. Some speculated that the crime was an act of revenge, possibly related to a medical dispute or a personal vendetta. Others suggested that it could have been a crime of opportunity, with the perpetrator taking advantage of the hospital's lax security to carry out the attack. One of the more disturbing theories was that the crime had been premeditated, with the perpetrator possibly being someone who knew Dr. Debnath and had been stalking her for some time. This theory gained traction when it was revealed that Dr. Debnath had received several anonymous threatening messages in the weeks leading up to her death. However, there was no concrete evidence to link these messages to the crime, and the investigation remained stalled. The CBI also faced challenges in identifying potential suspects. The hospital's large staff, combined with the constant flow of patients and visitors, made it difficult to pinpoint anyone who might have had the opportunity to commit the crime. Moreover, the lack of eyewitnesses and the absence of clear forensic evidence meant that the investigators were often working with little more than conjecture. Despite these challenges, the CBI remained committed to solving the case. They continued to interview staff, review footage, and analyze evidence, hoping to find the crucial piece of information that would crack the case wide open. But as weeks turned into months, the trail grew colder, and the chances of finding Dr. Debnath's killer seemed increasingly slim. As the investigation dragged on with little progress, it became clear that the system had failed Dr. Debnath in more ways than one. Not only had the hospital's security measures been woefully inadequate, but the investigation itself was hampered by bureaucratic red tape and a lack of resources. The case highlighted the systemic issues that plague India's criminal justice system, particularly when it comes to cases involving violence against women. The public's frustration with the investigation was palpable. Protests continued to erupt across the city, with many accusing the authorities of dragging their feet and not taking the case seriously. The situation reached a boiling point when the former principal of the hospital was forced to go on leave after being accused of mishandling the situation and failing to provide adequate support to the investigation. The case also sparked a broader debate about the safety of women in India. Despite the significant legal reforms that had been implemented in the wake of the Nirbhaya case, many argued that little had changed in terms of the actual safety of women. Dr. Debnath's murder served as a stark reminder that the threat of violence still looms large, even in places that should be safe. Debnath's murder did not just resonate within India. It also drew attention from the international community. The case was covered by several global news outlets, which highlighted the similarities between this case and other high-profile instances of violence against women around the world. In particular, the case drew comparisons to the murder of Sarah Everard in the United Kingdom, which had similarly sparked nationwide protests and calls for greater protections for women. Both cases highlighted the pervasive nature of violence against women and the failure of existing systems to protect them. The international coverage of Dr. Debnath's murder also served to amplify the calls for justice. Several global human rights organizations issued statements condemning the crime and calling on the Indian government to ensure a thorough and transparent investigation. The case became a rallying point for activists around the world, who saw it as yet another example of the systemic issues that continue to endanger women's lives. Dr. Debnath's death is a tragic reminder of the dangers that women continue to face, even in environments where they should be safe. Her murder has sparked a renewed call for change, both within India and globally, as people demand better protections and a more effective justice system. As the world watches, the hope is that her case will not be forgotten, and that it will lead to meaningful change that will protect others from suffering the same fate. In the end, the story of Dr. Moumita Debnath is not just a story of a brutal crime. It is a story of systemic failure, of a society that has yet to fully confront the violence that women face every day. It is a story that demands justice, not just for Dr. Debnath, but for all women who have been victims of violence. And it is a story that calls on all of us to do better, to create a world where women can live without fear, and where tragedies like this one are not just rare, but unthinkable. The tragic death of Dr. Moumita Debnath is not merely an isolated incident, but a profound commentary on the systemic failures that continue to plague societies worldwide. Her murder within the supposed safety of a hospital exposes deep vulnerabilities in our systems where security is lax. Investigations are hindered by inefficiencies, and justice remains elusive. The brutality of her death and the subsequent challenges in seeking justice reflect broader societal issues, especially concerning the safety and protection of women. This case serves as a stark reminder that despite legal reforms and heightened awareness, women remain at risk, even in spaces where they should feel secure. Dr. Debnath's story has ignited a powerful call for systemic change, one that transcends borders and resonates globally. The hope is that her death will not be in vain, that it will spark meaningful reforms in security, investigative processes, and societal attitudes towards women's safety. As the investigation continues, the demand for justice grows louder, fueled by the grief of those who knew and loved Dr. Debnath, and by the collective outrage of communities both in India and around the world. Her story must not fade into obscurity. It should stand as a testament to the urgent need for change, a symbol of the relentless pursuit of justice, and a catalyst for creating a world where such tragedies are not just rare, but unthinkable. In remembering Dr. Moumita Debnath, we must also remember the countless others who have suffered similar fates and use their stories to drive forward the fight for a safer, more just world for all.